Welcome viewers to another very special episode of Your Britain. Yes, Your Britain every Monday 5 p.m. UK time with your host Shehzad Iqbal, only on Kanshi TV Sky channel 772, broadcasting to over 180 countries around the globe with millions of viewers watching this program every Monday 5 p.m. UK time. And let me also remind you, if you've missed this evening's program, not to worry, you can catch us on Facebook, YouTube and on the Kanshi TV website, and also above all you can catch us on Friday 2 p.m. where we repeat this program again. So all the programs of Your Britons are repeated on Friday 2 p.m. So that gives you plenty of time and opportunity to watch Your Britain. So this evening's program I'll be talking to a very, very special guest, somebody who you may have known, who has all their life lived in Birmingham, Stokes and Coalfield, who worked extremely hard for all our communities right across the board. And as you know, the Metro Mayor elections are approaching on the 6th of May 2021. A couple of weeks back I've also had the police commissioner candidates. We've had Simon Foster last week, who was here from the Labour Party. We've had John Hunt from the Liberal Democrats, who will be standing as a police commissioner, and next week we've got Jay Singh, who will be standing for the Conservative Party. So of course you'll see many of the candidates. We also, just to inform you, that we've had some news today coming in about Andy Street. He will be coming in the next couple of weeks. We've also sent out official email and messages to Liam Byrne. Unfortunately, we haven't had any response at this particular time back from him. Maybe in the next couple of weeks we will have a response. So as I said, Your Britain is an equal opportunity. Everybody gets a chance to come on Your Britain and express your views, particularly the candidates, and then you people who are watching us, the viewers, are the judges of these programs. You decide who fits your criteria, who fits the criteria of your local area, your region, particular your family, your friends, your neighbors, which candidate suits you and their pledges and their promises. I don't really want to say anything more about pledges and promises. We've seen pledges and promises, we've heard pledges and promises for many years, but are they fulfilled? Do these candidates, once they're elected, do these candidates fulfill their promises? That's something for you to make a decision upon. My role and job here is to make sure that I put the candidates in front of you and ask them questions which I'm sure you'll be interested in this evening. So let me also remind you very briefly, the studio number, if you want to call us live, 08000, that's 08000886404. okay, that's a live studio number. This should be scrolling on your screen on the bottom somewhere. So let me now straight away, because we do have limited time and I've got approximately 20 questions or so. I don't know whether we can fit all these questions in for our respectable guest, but I'll try my level best. Also, if you want to email, text, by all means, you can do that as well. Let me introduce you to the one and only Jenny Wilkinson, who is the candidate for the Metro Mayor for the West Midlands here for the Liberal Democrats. Jenny, first and foremost, let me welcome you to Kanshi TV and let me welcome you to Your Britain. Thank you very much for coming this evening. I know for many years you have campaigned around Birmingham, around Sutton Coalfield. In fact, I would say around the whole of West Midlands you have campaigned for all our communities. Now you're standing for this election which is taking place on the 6th of May, which is the West Midlands Metro Mayor elections. Of course, we want to ask you the main reasons why you're standing for this, and if God willing you're elected in the next couple of weeks or so, we want to know what you will do for all our communities. So once again, officially welcome to Kanshi TV and welcome to Your Britain.
Thank you very much, Shehzad, and thank you very much for all the work that you're doing for the community. It's wonderful to have a show like Your Britain, which giving this kind of opportunity for the voters across the region, across the West Midlands, to actually see the candidates and get an insight into the candidates for these very important elections.
Thank you very much, Jenny, and let me just remind all our viewers as well, in the next couple of weeks, once we have individually interviewed all the candidates, we'll be also hosting a three panel here where we'll have all three candidates from all three parties at the same time at the same place. That'll be very interesting in the next couple of weeks, so make sure you tune into Your Britain and Kanshi TV for those shows coming up in the next couple of weeks or so. Right. Jenny, I understand that you're very keen and passionate to stand for these elections. I know that you worked extremely hard for many, many years within Birmingham and the surrounding areas. First of all, a bit about your background, a bit about yourself for people who don't know you, who's probably first time seeing you on TV. Please go ahead and, yourself and your background.
Yeah, thank you, Shazad. So I'm fairly new to politics, actually. I've been involved with the Liberal Democrats for about 5 years now, which is relatively new, I think. I got to the point in life where I decided that it was about time I actually stood up and made a difference, stopped shouting at the TV and actually, stand up and do something about it. So I've really, initially got very involved in my local community. So I'm a school governor, I'm a trustee of a local charity, after campaigning to save the local library. I'm involved in the local park group as well. So it's really, for me, about connecting with communities and supporting our communities to make life better for everybody. I'm also, I grew up in the West Midlands. I'm bringing up my own kids here, so it's just, I just want to make a difference.
Of course. Now, what we can talk about as well, which I'm in two minds about, is the facts and figures, viewers. The money that has been pumped into West Midlands. Presently we have Andy Street, who's the mayor for the West Midlands, but however, if we start talking about facts and figures and the billions of pounds that have been invested and where they've been spent, I think we're not going to go through all these questions which we have about this evening's program. So basically I will leave these. I promise you, when we get the three panels sorted out in a couple of weeks time, we'll put all the facts and figures in front of Andy Street and the rest of the candidates. So today we'll be discussing generally about what Jenny is willing to do and what she is going to do if she is hopefully elected on the 6th of May 2021. Right, Jenny, what is the main reason that you feel that you want to stand for this role, which is a very important role? It's a very senior role. It's a very powerful role at the same time. Why do you feel that you want to stand for this role?
So, as I was saying, for me, it's all about community and making, our communities a better place to live. And I've been doing that on a local level. And increasingly, I look at the West Midlands and I think, we've been left behind. We're being neglected. We don't get support and funding from central government that we should. We've just been overlooked. And what we need is somebody to actually really stand up to government and speak out for the West Midlands. So I want to make a difference to my region and to make the West Midlands the wonderful, thriving place that it should be and that the people of the West Midlands really deserve. So I just want to be a voice for the West Midlands.
You see, many people would probably want to ask this question. They're probably thinking in their minds that what makes you so different from the other two political parties, i.e. the Labour Party and i.e. the Conservative Party? Why should they vote you as a candidate?
I think the difference for me is around supporting the people on the ground. And I think at the moment the current mayor is very focused on sort of big business and business focus, and I want to be for the residents, for the people. Obviously the economy is really important in terms of providing jobs for people. That's where we get our money. But I want to speak up for our communities. We've got such wonderful diversity across the West Midlands, and it needs people to be listened to, and I actually want to listen to people and embed myself in the communities and hear what people have to say on the ground. I don't know everybody's experiences and their different lives that they lead. I'm very lucky and privileged in many ways. So I actually need to get in there and listen to people and actually take their views into account. I think all too often politicians come in and make decisions for people without actually really listening and really understanding what people's lives are like in Britain today.
You see, there may be many priorities for yourself if you're elected, but I'm sure you'll have certain priorities, or maybe a top priority that you feel is very important, that if you're elected, this is something that you're going to resolve maybe in the first couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. If you're elected, what are your main priorities that you will be going ahead with?
So So I think there's three key areas for me. The first is what I've already touched on about listening to people. So it's about empowering people and empowering communities and listening to them and engaging with them. We all need to work together. So we need businesses, the public sector, community groups, individuals, all working together, and that's how we can achieve so much more. So it's really that community focus is key for me. The second thing is really around tackling poverty and inequality. We've really seen from the pandemic how much different community groups have been worse affected by the pandemic than others. And this is really that the pandemic has shone a light on underlying inequalities that were here already. They're just being exacerbated by the pandemic. So we need to actually give people that basic standard of living. People shouldn't be worrying about putting food on the table for their kids. They shouldn't be worrying about having a roof over their heads or how they're going to pay their bills. We need to really get to the point where in a country like Britain today, we should not have anybody living in poverty. So that is a scandal. And then the third area is the environment. The climate change emergency, as well as the ecological emergency going alongside that. We need to be looking at building a green economy and coming back out of this to protect our planet as well as protect people's lives.
You see, you've touched upon businesses. We'll move on to the climate and a couple of other things that you've touched upon, but let me just draw your attention to businesses. Recently we've seen high streets which are becoming ghost towns, shutters. Wherever you go, you see shutters on shop fronts. People have lost their businesses, and no doubt in the coming weeks and months, things can get a lot worse or they can get a lot better. But the way things are going, there is no guarantee from central government either. They're trying their level best, fair play to them in a way that they have supported their communities, where credit is due is due. It's not anybody's fault, it's not any politician's fault or any political party's fault that this has happened, but they're working to the best of their ability. Now my question is that businesses are affected very, very seriously. If you're elected, how would you support these businesses, particularly the small businesses? When I'm referring to the high street, I'm talking about hairdressers, I'm talking about little supermarkets, grocery shops, news agents. These are the people that are suffering extremely at this particular moment. How would you support these small businesses?
Yeah, so our small and medium-sized businesses have been particularly badly hit,
of course,
by the pandemic. And what the government has done in terms of the furlough scheme has been great, but we need to see ongoing, continued support because there's so many businesses at threat of collapse, and there's also people that have been, missed out of the schemes the government's provided. So the self-employed small business owners and things are not necessarily getting the same support as the big businesses are needing. So what I want to see is an extension of the existing schemes, so business rates being frozen and VAT holidays and all this kind of thing needs to carry on. I'd actually really like to see a more fundamental scheme for small businesses like they've been doing in Germany, where businesses are getting a grant based on the lost revenue that they've suffered, so they can cover things like their rent and rates and the insurance costs and all these things they've still got to pay. So I think we need to be doing more to support our small businesses. And at a local level, I want to look at things like local procurement, so the public sector can be supporting and buying from small businesses, local businesses, and in order to actually support them and help them to thrive.
You see, at the same time, many people will be probably thinking that we as families are struggling. Like you mentioned, you touched upon, nobody wants to stand outside a food bank, especially being in Great Britain, probably the 4th or the 5th richest country in the world. That's what we're labelled as. People are struggling, children in the morning, some are struggling to even have breakfast before they leave school. Lunchtime, children are suffering. I'm mainly picking out this point because at the end of the day, I feel more for everybody, but particularly when it comes to children, I personally have a bit more interaction with with them and their lifestyles and how they're upgrown is, and this is really affecting them in the coming future. These are our future children, future generations that we're talking about. If those children have left their home in the morning, struggling to eat breakfast or get breakfast on the table or lunchtime, what future have we got in this country? We can see millions of pounds have been given to big businesses like you mentioned, manufacturers, companies and so on. But we have to work at grassroots level, and grassroots level is our children. That's our future. So people would say, if you're elected, Jenny, what would you do for normal families who are working day and night? And some parents I know, and some people that I personally know, who are working 60, 70 hours a week, 80 hours just to make ends meet and still struggling. And I know people personally who have been working in middle class jobs, I'm talking maybe between 30 to 40,000 bracket of earnings, but they are still struggling and going to food banks and so on just to make ends meet. Those are the people that are most struggling at this moment, and a lot of people would argue at the same time that this country, the rich are becoming more richer and the poor are becoming more poorer. There is no middle class left. These are some of the results that we've had back when we conducted our research, our production team. Before we do any program, we go out and we take general information from the public randomly to see what they would say. And at this particular moment, a lot of people that we've spoken to, Jenny, first thing that comes into their mind is, how do I feed my family? What do I do? What would you do for those struggling families?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely unacceptable that in Britain today we're seeing this level of poverty and families struggling to feed their kids. We have to address that. How can we look at ourselves as a country if we can't feed our children? So I think there's a few things particularly I'm looking at. One is around wages, and I want to introduce what's a real living wage. So the government at the moment has their living wage, but that's not the one that's set by the living wage review, where they actually look at what people need to survive on working in a basic income. So we need to start paying the real living wage to everybody who's working. The other thing I'm really interested in is universal basic income. So this is where every individual gets a payment each week or each month of a small amount, a few £100s, but they get that no matter what. It's paid to everybody,
right.
And it can help tackle poverty, and it can help people. So for example, people who've lost their jobs during the pandemic, it means they've at least got some basic level of income that they can rely on and they can fall back on. And it also enables people to actually pursue other things and not be worrying about the absolute basics. So I'd like to see universal basic income trials in the West Midlands to see what impact that makes on people's lives.
Moving on slightly, I've actually had many programs which I've conducted on this particular topic about homeless. Many programs in the last maybe 5-10 years been in broadcasting, particularly when it comes to homeless. People are still struggling at this particular moment, which is very sad again for one of the richest countries in the world. People on streets, in city centres, on high streets. And I can assure you one thing, Jenny, and I can assure the viewers that these people are not doing it just for the sake of it. There is nobody out there in the right state of mind that's going to stand come sunshine, come rain, come snow, come storm, floods, whatever. They'll be standing outside, begging for pennies. I don't think anybody in the right state of mind will do that. If, God willing, you're elected on the 6th of May, what would you do about this particular issue about homeless, which is a very, very serious issue in Birmingham at this particular moment? I was promised, as I said, I interviewed many charities previously and many other people who have assured our viewers that something will be done, we'll do this, X, Y, Z, but I can assure you, Maybe they have, but what I'm seeing or what we've conducted as a research, people are still on in fact, we're getting more people now on the streets what we had maybe 2 or 3 years. Every street that you see, every main road that you probably see leading into Birmingham city centre and out of Birmingham city centre, I can even name you a few. The Bristol Road, for example, I can name maybe 10 different roads, but I've just taken the Bristol Road as example. You'll see that at the Highgate Junction, people with small cups, pots, sadly begging for pennies. What would you honestly do if you're elected for this issue of homelessness?
Yeah, so we have to absolutely tackle this. And I think it's about getting to the root causes of homelessness and looking holistically at each individual and supporting them in all respects. So it's firstly, yes, get them a bed, get them somewhere safe and secure, and also somewhere stable, so they're not being moved from one place to the next, so they actually have a roof over their heads. But then they also need to be provided with the additional support services that they actually need to make a difference in their lives. So they need to be helped, if they've got addiction issues, or if they've got challenges, with mental health issues. They need to be supported and helped right from the outset to tackle all these underlying causes that lead to people to become homeless. And what we mustn't forget is when people think of homelessness, they think of the people who are out on the streets. But in actual fact, there is also a huge problem with hidden homelessness, where there's people who are just sofa surfing and staying on friends' sofas, or with families as well, that have been put in temporary accommodation, bed and breakfast accommodation. And some of the places I've been speaking to families who have been staying in appalling situations, which is nowhere near where the kids need to go to school. So we've got to look at the root causes of homelessness, but then in addition to that, we have to build more houses. There is a complete shortage of housing across the West Midlands, and in particular, we need housing for social rent, where we don't get, the old council houses and things that have all been sold off now. We need to be replacing that with housing that people can access.
You see, many people at the same time when we're talking homeless, I've got the phone lines, which I'm getting my producer saying we've got many people on the lines, but let me apologize to my viewers. Please just bear with me a couple of minutes, because I'm trying to get through these questions as quickly as I possibly can. Time is running out, so I will try to take some phone calls. I've got the emails and messages also coming in, so please just bear with me, and we'll take a few calls if we possibly can. But let me, because this is a great opportunity for all of us to get some answers from Jenny. So let's make sure we get these prime answers before we go to the phone lines. Right, Jenny, let me just come back again to your point of disabled. You mentioned the mental health issues. Again, that was a separate question, but because you've touched upon that, so that's fine. Let me just move one step further. Disabled and the vulnerables in our society. Again, I've done many programs on these issues. Disabled community is large in its own way. It might not be large in your eyes or my eyes or the viewer's eyes. You might see a few disabled people here, there and everywhere, but in their own world, in their own eyes, it's a big deal, it's a big issue. And we all feel sympathy and sorry for them in a way. That could have been anybody's child or anybody's father or mother or brother or sister. Now, coming back to these issues of vulnerability and disability, what would you particularly do if you're elected to support these individuals? They've always been on the back of the lorry, to be honest with you. They've always been ignored. There's no two ways about it, whether it's been this government or whether it's been previous governments. These people at the time of elections have been promised X, Y, Z. They've been promised the world, but once political parties and their representatives are elected, these people are the first people to get ignored. And this is God's honest truth, Jenny, of the work that we have done in broadcasting and people that we've spoken to. What would you do about these disabled individuals and vulnerable individuals?
Yeah, no, you're completely right, Shazad, and this is something I've seen. I was actually involved in producing a webinar a couple of weeks ago around disability, and we had over 200 people attend, by far the highest attendees we've ever had, and the issues and things people were talking about of just the constant challenges and inequalities that they face, unable to access, basic services, get on trains, get on buses. It's just, and then just the abuse that people are hearing as well, and that's visible disabilities as well. There's also loads of people with hidden disabilities that we can't see. So it's absolutely got to be a fundamental area of inequality that needs to be addressed. I think we've got to change how society looks at disabled people. There's a lot of disabled people who want to get into work, but who are not provided with those opportunities. So we need to be really challenging employers and start looking at disability statistics in terms of their levels of employment, in terms of equal pay for people with disabilities, in terms of making sure that those workplace adjustments are provided. We've got to actually make a real change, and this is something I feel really passionately about. I've been involved in a programme of my own work to support people with autism, young people with autism,
of course,
who have really low levels of employability because they're not given those opportunities. So we do, there's something called a scheme called supported internships, where employers will take on a young person, give them an internship alongside their education, and give them the opportunities just to develop basic skills, get used to working in a work environment. And those people thrive and they add so much to the workplace that we are missing out on so much enrichment for all our lives by not giving these people with just differences in their abilities and differences in their maybe the way their brains work, differences. It's not they've still got so much more to offer, and they can really contribute to our society. And we've got to allow them to do that and facilitate that.
You've touched a bit about employment and education, which was the next question I was coming on to, but since you've touched on this, let me also indicate this to you, that young people at this particular moment are very, very disappointed within themselves because they feel there is no light at the end of the tunnel. And I can honestly assure you of the people that we've spoken to, and this is right across the board from all communities, including the BMA community, that young children, they feel they have nothing to look forward for in terms of education and then in terms of employment. Now, if we take this step by step, first the education part of it is, why do you feel, and also if you're elected, how would you further support youngsters, and when I'm referring to youngsters, I would probably say from secondary school onwards. Primary school we can maybe get away, they're too young, but when it comes to education, serious education, we're talking 11 plus, and then when they start the teenage years, 14, 15, 16, that's where a child decides which way he needs to go, whether he's going to go into employment, whether he's going to go into further education, whether in a training program, apprenticeships, and so on. But at the moment, they are really, really struggling within themselves to make decisions, i.e. no proper support within the community, no proper centres, advice centres. Yes, you have the advice centres within the colleges and within the schools, but that's not something that they look forward for. They want independent advice, obviously school for Ofsted reasons and many other reasons which I don't want to go into. They would probably advise them XYZ to make sure that their Ofsted report next year is graded A, or graded B. They don't want to see the Ofsted report on an F or a U or something, or if it works in numbers or letters. So basically, that is not independent. That is from within the institution. When I'm referring to independent, where do these youngsters turn to? And if you're elected, Jenny, how would you particularly support children at the age of 14, 15, 16, secondary schools? And then furthermore, if I go into colleges, how are these children going to be supported in colleges? By giving them a bus voucher is not supporting them, or by giving them £20 or £25 a week and say, right, there's your 20 quid, you can, go and buy your books. I mean, I honestly can't think, maybe in my days, going back 20 years, there may be books for, 20 quid, you can probably buy a bundle, but nowadays, average, £20, £30 is per item I'm referring to, per book. And then they've got the food, and let me very briefly highlight this to you as well. The amount of the amount of prices in terms of the colleges and in terms of school, in terms of the food prices, is absolutely disgusting. And the reason why I know that is because I have my own children going to secondary schools, and sometimes it makes you think, is that the only way to make money from vulnerable parents who are sending their children to school just to fulfill the accounts and make sure the balance sheet looks absolutely fine on both sides? Whereas, for example, if you can buy a drink from outside for 20, 30 pence, 40 pence, the same drink, the same make, which I've seen my own son bringing home, oh dad, I've paid 150 for this.
No.
Or I've paid 130 for this. And I'm like, hold on, I've bought you the same drink a couple of weeks back, 40 pence a bottle. I'm giving my own example, what I see, what I've been told by my own son, let alone anybody else's example. And there are going to be millions of parents who feel the same. So there are not just one issues within schools, there are many issues within schools that needs to be addressed. Unfortunately, this morning's breaking news, we've had young children, particularly when it comes to mixing and interacting with their fellow colleagues, i.e. females, how they respond and how they do things, with each other in terms of communication and so on. So that's a new issue which I was listening to the news this morning. So there are many issues which I can highlight. I would also like to highlight this to you, as a candidate, that the knife crime, which I've spoken to the commissioners last week, and I will next week as well with the third candidate, that it's so much on the rise. So much young children at 14 are taking knives into schools. Nothing has been happening. I've interviewed the police crime commissioner about 15 months ago. I interviewed him personally, and for that reason, because at that time there was a big issue about children, teenage kids taking knives into school in their bags, and we recommended that there should be some sort of barriers, metal barriers outside schools where people walk in and walk back out. But no action has been taken, not that I'm aware of, no action has been taken that there's been any of these barriers that have been set up. People want answers for these. This is what the people want. The local community wants that. People don't want, to hear the promises, the fake promises, which many politicians present at election times. The whole year round you don't see their faces, and then when it comes to election time, the last month or the last 2 months, every single day, including weekends, COVID or no COVID, they're on your doorsteps. This trend, this chain needs to be either adjusted or either completely broken. You can't have it both ways. You can't fool people for long enough. People have been, the electorate, the voters have been fooled for many years. This needs to be stopped, and this is why people are looking for alternatives like yourself and saying, hold on, why not give a chance to somebody who's never stand for this position before? Why not give a chance to somebody who maybe is not from the mainstream political parties? So if you're elected, i.e. education, employment, crime is a serious issue within Birmingham, the West Midlands, I would say, what would you do about these couple of issues, Jenny?
I think this is where, when I go back to what I was saying right at the beginning, around listening to people and listening to communities is really important. Because what we need to do is politicians who don't just come up with these grand schemes of, we'll do this, we'll do that. What we need is listening, and then we need action. So for all these things, we have to really understand what is going on in our communities and what is happening to our young people, and take action that addresses those. And I think in terms of the education piece, the pandemic has really shown the inequality here. So where children have now been asked to work from home, they're learning from home, they don't have access to the digital technology that they need for that. So there's kids trying to do their lessons on a mobile phone from their parents, whereas really they need a laptop and proper Wi-Fi and broadband and all the connectivity. So I think looking at digital provision for our children and young people is a good way of addressing some of the issues, the divide and some of the issues, because that's how they're going to be able to catch up on their education, and they're going to be able to look for work. And what I really want to see is a lot better, closer working between employers and businesses and the education system, so that when our young people are leaving school and going into the workplace, they're actually got the skills that they need for the future of work. So they've got the kind of technology skills, the personal skills and training, not just academic skills, but real life work skills that they need. And I want to look at our apprenticeship system, which is there's loads of money and funding available for apprenticeships, but there aren't apprenticeships being offered and taken up. So we need to look at what's going on there and make sure that all young people are getting access to, if they need additional education to catch up on missed education, let's give them that. If they're trying to get into work, let's give them, make sure they've all got the opportunities for those internships, apprenticeships, and workplace experience that actually means they can find work and they can find jobs.
I'm sure you were looking into the local schools as well. As I've mentioned about, that was another very serious issue which we conducted in our research, about canteen prices and so on. That's something which needs to be addressed, that people are struggling as is at the moment. They can't afford to pay. If they've got 3 children, on average, if it's £5 or £6 a child, that's £15 a day. Times that by 5, that's nearly 45, 50 quid a week. Times that by a month, that's nearly 200, 250 quid a month on just one child. It's difficult for them to survive on. Right, I'm sure you will carry out your campaign, elected or not elected. I'm sure you will work, against all these negative points that we have raised in this program this evening. Right, cut the red tape. That's another issue. We've had many text messages now, emails. I've got so many listed here, but let's take this text message that why can't we cut the red tape? The red tape is not letting us move in terms of businesses. There's so many rules, regulations. The city councils are digging out to pinpoint anything and anyone in terms of their financial record to make sure that it's balanced, the books are balanced again. Why can't we cut the red tapes on terms of health and safety? Of course, we're not going to compromise on that. But there are many other issues exceptional of the health and safety where you got to do X, Y, Z, and this is why we will allow you to this. People are fed up, Jenny, with the red tape. People are not willing to invest in high streets and in businesses because of the dramatic red tapes. Particularly, let me just highlight you, in Birmingham, we've had the Labour Party, as you know, in control for over 10 years here in Birmingham, but the red tape is a big issue, and I'm sure previously other governments may have been in the same position, or future governments might be in the same position, but at this moment people of Birmingham, particular Birmingham, which is approximately a 10-mile radius, 10 to 12-mile radius, people are fed up with red tape. Businesses are fed up, and businessmen are fed up with red tape. Would you assure them, if you're elected, what would you do about this particular issue about red tape?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge in a lot of different areas. One of the problems, and it probably goes beyond the mayoral remit, I guess, because it relates to national government. And one of the problems is that we have our tax systems are very complicated. So our business rate system, for example, is something that really urgently needs reform. At the moment, the business rates levels are ridiculously high. They're not being reviewed regularly. The rates are too high. So we need to be cutting business rates and making them simpler for businesses, because at the moment our retail units on the high street can't compete with the online businesses who don't have the same tax systems.
Correct.
So we need to be looking at levelling the playing field for all businesses so that we can actually bring our high streets back to life. And one of the issues with red tape that's particularly frustrating is that everyone was told Brexit, well, let's stop dealing with the EU, it's all coming from the EU, it's all their fault. And look what's happened now. Now Brexit has happened. All we're seeing is more regulation, more red tape, more problems.
Correct.
So we've got to look at what is going on there and look at what this deal that has been done by our government and say, can it be simplified? Can we actually get to a position where there's not more red tape for our businesses, our local businesses? They're actually, things should be made easier for them, not more complicated.
And by charging people £8 every time you go into city with the congestion charge, which has been introduced by the Labour Party just a couple of months back, that from June the 1st, I believe, if I'm right, from June the 1st, anybody going into the zone will be charged £8 at a time. How are people going to afford to pay £8 at a time? We're seeing our streets, our city centres becoming ghost towns. People are going to continue to shop more online, and we'll see even bigger. We've seen British Home Stores, we've seen many, I could name so many who've already shut down. They can't afford to run any longer. But this congestion charge is really a big pain for people in West Midlands. What I don't understand, and what many people don't understand, is that you'll get congested within that 2 or 3 mile area, and then once you leave that area, you're not going to get congested anymore. That doesn't make any logic sense. So this is not a big radius we're talking about. We're talking from about a 3 mile radius, maybe 4 mile radius. So once you go in there, you'll have to pay the £8, and you won't be affected with any smoke. You won't have any congestion. That's exactly what we've been told indirectly. But once you come out from there, it's fine. You're okay. So what's your views on this £8 charge, which is absolutely disgusting?
No, I think it's a really poorly thought out policy. I think everyone accepts that we need to do something about our air and get clean air. There's a lot of ways to tackling that. Part of that is a transition to electric vehicles, part of it is moving on to public transport, part of it is active travel, more cycling and walking. But you've got to kind of you've got to do these things the right way round, in my opinion. And so by introducing a congestion charge, that just ends up penalising the people who can't afford to buy an electric vehicle because they're extortionately expensive. So it actually makes inequality worse, because you end up with the poorer people who can't afford a brand new vehicle and are having to make do with what they have. It penalises them, and as you say, it's kind of illogical, because actually, what about the air around our houses? What about the air around our schools that aren't within the congestion zone? I'd like to see our schools being cleaned up so that our children, when they're walking to school, are breathing clean air. So we need to look at it. You have to kind of encourage people to move on to different forms of transport, encourage people to move by subsidising electric vehicles, by making sure there's charging points so people can actually, reliably use them. So you've got to look at it, I think, the other way round. Yes, there's a place for penalising it, but only once there's a real alternative in place. And at the moment, for so many working people, there is not an alternative apart from driving into the city.
Right. Okay. Let me just. Again, this is another link-on question to what we've just talked about. Is approximately we have about 10,000, approximately, I believe, 10,000 private hire drivers in Birmingham. I'm not talking about the black cabs. I'm talking about the private hire drivers. We've done a program on this, I believe it was about 6 weeks ago, with one of the representatives from the Private Hire Association. Actually, I've done more than one program, but this was the recent one. 10,000 drivers believe that they've been treated unfairly by Birmingham City Council, whereby the black cabs who pay for the same licence, who pay the same running costs, same MOTs, and the other running costs that incur within the business. But these private hire drivers cannot use the bus lanes. Number one, it's totally unfair. Equality should be equal for all. Everybody's paying the same license fee. Why are these people of Birmingham treated as second-class individuals? And people are fuming with that. I've had this gentleman from the association. He said he will obviously make sure that he can reach out to all the authorities and everybody else, and to run a full flagship campaign against this issue. But we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks or months. But however, this is very important for each candidate now to stand up for those 10,000 drivers and say, if the black cab drivers can use the bus lanes, the buses can use it, why can't these? They're doing exactly the same job as what the black cab drivers are doing. So your views on that, and also if you're elected, would you bring a change and of course resolve this issue for these 10,000 drivers?
No, absolutely. it's clearly unfair that, you know,
double standards.
Yeah, if black cabs can do it, why the private hire companies don't have the same rules and
exactly.
responsibilities? So it's clearly unfair. And also, again, it's around, you know, the impact on small businesses. You know, these are, you know, family people trying to make a living and earn money and you know, make money for their families, to support their families, you know, working really hard and doing a good job and providing a service to people across the community who need to use these vehicles. So it's wrong that they're being treated and singled out differently. So yeah, absolutely, I completely agree that that's something that we need to look at. We need to make sure there's a level playing field for everybody.
That question was asked by one of our callers who texted us through. He said, would you run some sort of campaign or help us unite on this particular issue? You know, that now that we've raised this issue, not just now, in fact, even 2 or 3 years been working on this issue, but nobody out there is listening to us in terms of institutions, authorities and the council. He said, would you particularly help us with this issue?
Yeah. Well, as I say, I want to listen to people. I want to listen to people's issues. So, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Thank you to your caller. And yes, I'm really interested to listen and hear more about the issues affecting
why
these groups.
Why they've been treated unfairly.
Yeah, because, you know, we can't know. I don't know. I don't know the issues affecting every different group of citizens around the West Midlands, and that's why, you know, I'm here to listen and I'm here to understand what the issues are and then see what we can do to help make things fair again.
Millions of pounds, Jenny, has been spent on the HS2. Millions. First, it was, I believe, 26. The figure was 26. Then it's probably gone up to 48, if I'm right, approximately around that sort of figure. So it's basically almost doubled. First, we had a date of a couple of years, and now it's moved up to almost 2030, 2029, 2030 mark. Do you believe that we should go ahead now that we are? But do you believe it's the right move to go ahead with the HS2?
I think, with regards to HS2, I think it's been implemented very badly. I think fundamentally, I agree with HS2 because it's not about getting people to London quicker, which is what everyone thinks. It's not about the speed. What it's about is actually freeing up capacity on railways. So by building the HS2 line, what we're doing is releasing capacity on our local railway network. So that could be used for local commuters, it could be used for freight. So one of the things we want to try and do is get freight off the roads and onto rail. That's better for the environment. The other important thing about HS2 actually is I think the next bit of it, and I don't think it's been done the right way by starting from London and going to Birmingham. I actually think access, to, you know, getting to Manchester, getting to Leeds, getting to North, that bit of it is more important. But the problem is that it's been so appallingly badly managed.
Absolutely.
You know, we need to look at these projects. This constantly happens with any big infrastructure project this government's doing. It's the same with what they've been doing in London, and the cost is unacceptable. And the other thing that's unacceptable is the nature impact, where that's not been dealt with correctly. They should be using this as an opportunity to make a green corridor through our countryside and protect nature as well, and that's not been done. So I think in principle HS2 is a good thing, but it's been poorly implemented and poorly managed.
And of course, and when it comes particularly to contract as well, some of the contracts and contractors have overcharge, I would probably say would be the right word in this conversation, in this interview. Overcharge in millions and absolutely not much work going on. I think that'd be the fairest way of putting that. But there's been no accountability of what's going on. Soon as a contractor says, I've run out, there goes the next lot of money, there goes the next set of date. That needs to be stopped. There still needs to be some sort of system in place, some sort of management in place of what's going on and where every penny is spent. At this moment, it's just like flow with the money and we'll see what happens.
It needs proper oversight is what's needed, proper oversight and review.
Right, okay, and let me just draw your attention to another very serious question when it comes to our communities, probably the BAME community. Diversity is a very, very big issue in our communities at this particular moment. How will you, I know at this particular moment you're working from people from all backgrounds right across the board. particularly in your campaign and so on, and I'm sure in the next coming weeks we'll see you campaigning within the inner city areas, which you're doing at this moment, but there are certain areas which needs to be covered in the coming weeks for your elections. How will you engage with the communities right across the board in the West Midlands?
I mean, one of the wonderful things about the West Midlands is our diversity and our diverse communities. But again, years of neglect and lack of support for different communities has left us in a poor position. We can achieve so much more if we all work together. So it's really important to me that we integrate our communities and understand our communities and listen to them. So as I've said, listening to people is really important to me. And what I want to do is things like proper focus groups where we actually listen to people, listen to what they say and take action based on it. At the moment, so many consultations done by local government are just a tick box exercise where we've done a consultation, right, put it to one side, that's it, done. We need to be listening to what people have to say. I also want to introduce citizens' assemblies where the people can actually make their voices heard about the important issues in our society. So things like how we tackle climate change, making sure it's done in a way that people are bought into and people support and people can achieve. Tackling, the racial inequalities and that we're facing and the discrimination that we're facing, and how can we really address that? And we've got to actually get people's voices heard and people's voices out there. We should be having more diversity in our representation so that everybody has a voice and everybody is listened to. So for me, it's about bringing people together and giving people the voice to be heard. We just have under 2 minutes, I've been told by my producer, but I've got one final question for you very briefly. What ability does the West Midlands may have to implement change across the region? What powers do they have? If you can very briefly. Yeah, so the powers at the moment are limited. They are limited, and most of what the mayor does is working through the other councils and having to influence. And so it's about actually being able to work with different people from different parties and different backgrounds, all working together. And that's something, we as Liberal Democrats do. We work together, we cooperate. We want cooperative politics, not confrontational politics. Correct. And that's how we can get things done. Your final message, you only have approximately 20 seconds for your final message for people to support and vote for you on the 6th of May 2020. That's Jenny Wilson from the Liberal Democrats standing as your Metro Mayor candidate for the West Midlands. Jenny, your voice, last 20 seconds for the great message. I want to be your mayor and your voice, standing up for the people of the West Midlands. Only by working together across our communities can we build a fairer, greener, more compassionate West Midlands. So please, give me your vote on the 6th of May. There you go, viewers. That was Jenny Wilson from the Liberal Democrats, your candidate for the West Midlands Mayor on the 6th of May 2021. Thank you very much for watching Your Britain. As always, one of the highly rated programs watched around the whole continent, in particular in the UK. Thank you very much for all your continued support. Don't forget to watch this program on Friday. If you've missed it, no problems. You can see it's on Facebook, YouTube and the Kanshi TV website. And by all means on Friday 2 p.m. Love, respect, peace for each and every one of you. See you same time, same place next week. Bye bye.